Are you looking to pick the brains of the best and brightest Dynasty minds in the community and what their thoughts are on this rookie class? Well, stick around because I've got two of the brightest ready to run through a 2-round, 1QB rookie mock draft right now. Hello and welcome to the Fantasy Sanctuary. I said I've got two of the best and brightest. I did not disappoint. Joining me today for a 1QB rookie mock, I've got the godfather of Dynasty, Ryan McDowell of DLF. How are you doing, Ryan?
I'm doing great. Thanks for having me on, Rich.
No, thanks for coming on. Always a pleasure. And joining us as well, we've got Kevin Coleman, one of the brightest minds in Dynasty community of Football Guys and the Devy Royale, and just released their rookie guide. Kevin, how are you doing today?
I'm tired. I'm exhausted, but I'm glad to come on. Doing a rookie guide is a lot of work, but I appreciate having him on. And as always, you guys do great things. So always nice to jump on. I don't know about best and brightest, but I'm all right. Like I put above average. Like I was that C's get degrees guy in college. So like I say above average.
Well, we're big fans of you both here. So just to paint the picture, what we're going to be doing today is we're going to be doing a 1QB rookie mock based off a real mock. So we're using the Pro Football Network 7-round mock draft from the 7th of February. So every player has got draft capital and a landing spot. Ryan, I'm going to come to you first. Is there any players from this mock draft that we're going to be using that surprised you, the landing spot, surprised you, the draft capital, that would change kind of how you're thinking about things at the moment?
Yeah, I mean, I think there's always some good takeaways in these mocks, especially this early in the process. I think really the second, or maybe you want to call it the third tier of wide receivers, is super interesting right now. You could start that as early as the projected late first rounders and take it really all the way to the end of day 2, probably. The order of those guys, and I won't name all the names here, but the order in this mock draft was a little surprising for me. Not necessarily the landing spots, but just the order of those wide receivers. And then if we want to dig a little bit deeper, one that just really left me kind of confused was Braylon Allen to the Commanders. So, it just feels like they've done this like 2 years in a row, right? I mean, or 2 or 3 years in a row, I guess. Brian Robinson, and they get my Kentucky boy, Chris Rodriguez, who played well in spurts as a rookie. And Braylon Allen feels kind of similar to those guys, probably more talented, but that one just confused me as a late day 2 pick. I don't know about that one.
Yeah, they always say, build strength on strength. I'm not sure drafting 3 of the same running back in the same backfield is particularly what they mean by that. But Kevin, any particular players, or I guess groups of players, that stand out from the mock draft that we're going to be using?
Yeah, no, I saw the same thing. A lot of that second tier wide receivers, it's basically pick your poison. Who do you like the best talent wise? Because landing spots in those areas aren't the greatest. I mean, there's a couple fun ones, but I think it just shows the depth of the class at the wide receiver position, especially in one quarterback. Which is a little different than Superflex. I'm used to Superflex, so I'm getting my one quarterback mode, like thinking of like where those tiers are. And then also like, if you're not liking some of like where they landed, where are you going to take Caleb Williams or one of these quarterbacks in one quarterback? Where does that push him up as well? So like seeing how the landing spots kind of played out as far as like the one running back that hurt my soul. I'm a big Jalen Wright fan out of Tennessee. And him going in the 5th round, PFN is just crushing my dreams there. Like, I think that he's going to get a little higher draft capital than that. I like the spot, though. Arizona would be a great spot if he could go a little bit higher draft capital for all my analytics guys out there. That would be good. But overall, I mean, these things are always fun. And like in February, you're just looking at trying to find spots and like, where's the talent at? But that would be my big takeaway. Depth at wide receivers. Where's the tier for that QB1? When are we going to take him? And then just Jalen Wright, just a little bit painful.
Beautiful. Well, let's dive straight into the mock. Ryan, you won the toss. You're going to have the 101. Now, it feels like this is consensus. Are you going to shock us here at all, or?
No, I don't think so. I don't think so at all. I think in a one quarterback dynasty league, this becomes one of the easiest picks we've seen in quite some time. We've got quite a few receivers coming off the board early, but the first one is Marvin Harrison to the Arizona Cardinals in this mock draft. And, that seems pretty likely, honestly, at this point. I mean, I think we're talking 3 to Arizona, 4 to New England, somewhere, one of those options as far as where Harrison could land.
And what do you make of Harrison?
I got those picks mixed up, but yeah, 3 to New England, 4 to Arizona. You guys are.
What do you make of Harrison as a prospect, Ryan? Last week I talked about him as potentially being the safest dynasty pick in rookie drafts of probably the last 7 years. Is that something you're kind of thinking as well?
Yeah, I think I would be on board with that. He's certainly in the conversation. I mean, we've really seen everything we need to see from Harrison, I think. And I mean, obviously he has the pedigree, and I think that just makes you feel a little more confident in him as a prospect. Yeah, I'm just excited to get him on some of my teams.
Yeah, absolutely. I couldn't agree more. Before we dive into the 102, if you are here and watching, this is where the draft begins. Make sure you hit subscribe. We've got plenty more mock drafts and so much more rookie content coming over the next few days. Kevin, the 102, is this where are you going here?
Yeah, this is where the landing spots kind of suck. So this is a pretty simple Malik Neighbors to me based on talent, but he got drafted by Atlanta. And then you have Rome Odunze, who's going to the Giants to be their wide receiver 1, but who's throwing him the football is the question mark on that side there. This early, I'm always going to go with talent, and I'm going to look at best player available. So I'll take Malik Neighbors, but going into it, they really have to drastically upgrade their quarterback room, because with Drake London being there, Kyle Pitts, you need a quarterback that can basically elevate 2 wide receivers to top 12 status, if that's what you're banking on with London too, with Neighbors there. So this is more of a talent over, possible production that first year, or how does that room look? I love what they've done with their offensive coordinator, bringing the assistant over from the Rams. I like Raheem Morris. I like what they've done with the coaching staff, but we've seen this purgatory of wide receivers with bad quarterbacks for a long time. We see them all over the place. So that concerns me a little bit, but this is just a talent. I really feel like these 2 are the most talented players in the draft, so I will stick to the board and take talent, but I don't necessarily love the landing spot.
Do you think there's any landing spot, or I guess what draft capital would it need to be for Neighbors not to be the pick here at 102?
This one probably. I mean, I think some people might look at it and be like, they don't like the fact that he'd be dealing with, the talent of London and the talent of Pitts there, and with that quarterback. I think this would probably be the grossest one. Maybe New England, depending on what they did at the quarterback position, if they decide to kind of go there. But just based on the top 10 of where he's kind of getting, put there, he has the talent to overcome a Daniel Jones type, quarterback situation if he's the wide receiver 1. I don't mind the Giants, but just thinking of the top 10, this one would probably be maybe the most concerning, depending on what they do in free agency or the draft or whatever they do there.
Okay, so coming back to you, Ryan, with the 103, where are we going to go here?
Yeah, I totally agree with everything Kevin said on Neighbors versus Odunze in this scenario. And, at least in my opinion, Odunze gets the better landing spot with the Giants. And he gets actually the higher draft capital, 106 versus 108 for Neighbors. Obviously not a huge difference there. So I think it's a 3-player draft right now in single quarterback league. So yeah, I'm going with the Odunze. Pretty easy pick at this point.
Have you got? I'm still kind of working through my process, and I'm a little bit concerned about Odunze's lack of production in those first 2 years. Now, obviously, we had the COVID first 2 seasons. Obviously, the first season, I think he played 4 games or something like that. Are you almost banking that COVID affected seasons into your evaluation of these rookies?
I mean, I think essentially we have to throw them out. It was such a different experience for every team, every player. I mean, we had some teams trying to play essentially full seasons, some teams obviously not even getting close to that. So it's tough to hold that against any player or any of these situations. So I'm really just honestly with the Odunze focused on the last 2 seasons. And I think he's kind of been a pleasant surprise from, big draft media. He's a player I was high on throughout the season, and certainly entering this early draft season. But then to see some of the some of the ESPN folks, some of the NFL.com folks come out with him as not only a first rounder, but as a top 10 pick in many cases, as he was here, felt a little validated on that one. He was one of my favorites, and looks like, we're certainly not alone in that.
And Kevin, so Ryan said this is a 3-player draft.
Mm-hmm.
We've had those 3 players go off the board. If you're sitting there with the 104, is that a pick you're looking to move, whether that be either back in the first round or potentially for a veteran?
No, because I still think that Brock Bowers is there, and I'm okay taking Brock in the top 4. I like the spot. Indianapolis would be a fantastic spot for Brock. I think with Richardson being there, he could be the wide receiver 2-ish. I know a lot of people like Josh Downs, but I do think that Bowers could step right in there with Pittman. I love what Philadelphia was able to do with Goddard there when Steichen was there as the offensive coordinator. So we've seen a lot of progress there. I still think in one quarterback, this is your tier though, like your 4 guys where even landing spot where they're at, you're comfortable with, to piggyback on what Ryan was talking about, the Odunze too, for context out there. I know not everybody likes college football. I mean, I'm a degenerate. I love college football, but I know in 2020, the COVID year in Pac-12 out here in California, it was awful. They were making people just not play. It was bad. Also, Washington had one of the worst head coaches in college football for 2020 and 2021, and quarterbacks. When you think of the quarterback room, they were one of the worst in the Pac-12. That's why Odunze's didn't have what the numbers that he had. Then they had DeBoer come over from Fresno State. Then they had Michael Penix Jr. Everything kind of helped him in those 2 years. So I think context for those numbers are important there. Not only was it COVID, it was just he had a terrible situation. He actually entered a transfer portal, but then came back. So that was one of those things that he actually helped himself a lot. Then you got Bowers, who I think he is in a tier of himself. As far as Dynasty goes, he's already a top 5 guy. I'll take him now because his value is going to pretty much hold. Look at how much Pitts' value hold, even though Pitts hadn't done anything that well. I know he had 1,000 yards, so don't come at me in the comments. But, when you're thinking of production-wise, that top 4 area, I'm cool with holding him there. So, yeah, I think these 4 guys in one quarterback is where you're comfortable. And in the 105, it gets interesting because it really could go either way here, especially because the running backs. The running backs is a problem in this class.
Yeah, absolutely. And on Bowers, before we move on, it feels like the one concern, there's a lot of people holding their breath around the measurables when it comes to the combine. Are you looking at the height? Are you looking at the weight with any level of concern?
Nah, he's a baller, man. There's just dudes, right? I know that people are not gonna like him in terms of maybe that they concerned. The picture that was going around where he looked like the dad. He looked like me, at a barbecue, just standing there, in his little short shorts and everything. But he plays the game very well. I think in today's day and age of how they use tight ends, inline, out, slot, getting them, it doesn't have to necessarily just be an inline blocker. He doesn't need to do that. 12 personnel has opened up a lot of that, especially with what the Colts like to run too. They have tight ends to block. They need a weapon like him. And if he goes to a place that is a wide receiver too, I'm all aboard.
That sounds good. So Ryan, back to you for the 5th pick. Where are we looking?
First, I would just add on Bowers. I think that the Colts in the mid-first round that would be a landing spot to get excited about, right? We saw that offense. Steichen was kind of in his bag there late in the season as they were kind of getting rolling. It was just too little, too late for that team, and obviously some injuries killed them. But you take the excitement of what we saw in that offense late in the season, and you're essentially at Anthony Richardson and Brock Bowers. That would be a fun team to watch next season. So yeah, those are clearly the top 4. I think we've had it pretty easy so far. And like Kev said, gets a little messy from here on out. I think this player, based on my rankings, based on the landing spots and draft capital as well, is kind of in a tier of his own. I'm going Brian Thomas here, Buffalo Bills pick in the late first round. Another player that's been a big riser. Over at DLF, we did a 2-round early rookie mock draft. Before the bowl games even happened, and Brian Thomas wasn't even drafted. He has been, that's probably on me and maybe on some of us who are participating to overlook him a little bit. But I mean, he's another guy that went from, somebody to be aware of to, he's gone in the first round of the NFL draft.
Yeah.
So, and I think he's going to be in this mid first round of rookie drafts as well.
Yeah, and that would be a fascinating land spot, wouldn't it, with the Bills? You'd feel like he'd almost step straight in and be the Gabe Davis replacement from day one there as that deep threat. It would certainly mesh well with Josh Allen and the way that he likes to play.
Yeah, I mean, Davis obviously a free agent. Looks like he could be moving on. And I mean, Stephon Diggs is not too happy himself, it seems like. So certainly some changes coming to the Buffalo Bills. And, Thomas in this landing spot would be able to take advantage of that.
Yeah, and Kevin, up at the 106 here, you mentioned running backs earlier. Are you tempted to start looking that way, or are you going to keep the pass catching run going?
No, absolutely not. I'm not taking a running back yet. I'm going to let Ryan do that for me. I thought he was going to help me with this pick because I'm between two guys here. So I'm going to take a shot and hope that he doesn't draft the other guy. I'm going to take Caleb Williams here at 106. I know it's a one quarterback. But if you think that Caleb in most super flex rankings I've seen him be a top 7 guy, in my own combined for everybody that I have, he's a number 7 overall, and that might be a ceiling rank, and people might think I'm dumb because he paints his nails or whatever the narrative that I've heard out there with Caleb Williams. I think that if you think he can be a top 7 guy in super flex, then mid first in this spot where maybe the tier is broke. Like I do think Ryan was right. Brian Thomas kind of is a tier in his own. Okay, where do you want to go here? I don't mind taking a shot with Caleb here. I know some people will wait for Jaden, maybe Drake later or whatever. But if you think the upside is there for Caleb, he goes to the Bears and you think, hey, they added maybe a wide receiver at 9 and, they kind of ready to roll out. I think, and then they have DJ Moore there. They have Cole Kmet, those pieces there. I think Caleb at 106 is fine pick. I don't love it, but I'll take it there just based on the upside.
Do you have any difference in terms of how you're approaching the quarterback position, given this is one quarterback versus Superflex? I know I was talking a couple of weeks ago about how in Superflex, for me, Caleb Williams and Drake May are much closer because I think Drake May is a little bit safer. In a one quarterback draft, I'm much lower on Drake May because he doesn't have that super elite ceiling. Is that something that's coming into your thought process here with that a potentially elite ceiling of Caleb Williams?
Yeah, of course. I think that Caleb has a ceiling. I'll take him in the first, right? I think Jaden is the other one where I'd be like rushing upside. If you feel like he can run at his weight, he's worth probably a back end first if you feel like going for him and going there. But yeah, a guy like Drake, like I think in one quarterback is not worth it because what is he? If you project him as QB 12 to 15, you can find those guys. You can go trade for those guys and there's value there. I just wait for Michael Pratt in like the 3rd or 4th round. Like if I'm going to take, that's how I would look at those kind of quarterbacks there. Caleb to me has that ceiling. It's probably a reach a little bit here too, but we're having fun. And I think that if you think he can project to be a top 7 guy, even a top 10 guy, it's worth the pick. I
think whenever they're, a tier flattens out, it's kind of like, why not go and get your guy? So yeah, no hate from me. Ryan, let's find out if you're going to steal Kevin's other guy here.
Yeah, I don't know if I am because this tier is messy, and I think Kevin made a good case for Caleb Williams. I had him a little bit lower, but I like the idea there. I guess I'm just going to rely on draft capital a little bit here and go with Xavier Legette, the Kansas City Chiefs, in this case, wide receiver late in the first round. Another player I like, we started the show by talking about surprises. Seeing him in the first round was a little bit of a surprise for me here. But if he gets first round draft capital and he goes to the Chiefs where he could be, the wide receiver 2 potentially and the 3rd option in the passing game basically from day one, then that's what pushes him up from early 2nd rounder where he might be right now to mid 1st rounder.
And I think it's an interesting landing spot, isn't it? Obviously, everybody's going to chase after any Chiefs receiver, it feels like. But there could potentially be a hole there. Marquez Valdes-Scantling could potentially be cut this year. I think the Chiefs can save $12 million if they decide to move on from him. It feels like if they're going to spend a first-round pick on a player like Legette, that could be almost a natural replacement, similar type of kind of style, that long strider downfield type of receiver. With this pick here, Ryan, how much higher are you drafting him because of that draft capital we've seen in this mock draft that we're utilizing off?
Yeah, he would certainly be one of the big risers here in this scenario. As I said, to me, getting surprising draft capital and the nice landing spot. I'm looking at him right now as kind of a borderline first, second round rookie pick in in my rankings in single quarterback. So this would be a pretty sizable bump at this point. I mean, I would love to hear what Kevin thinks about this kid.
So Xavier, I go back and forth with because, his production was so crazy his first 4 years, just nothing there. And then all of a sudden, then he kind of comes out there. I think that he does some really good things. I think, playing the ball strength, maintain through contact really well. I think that he's going to have the speed that you really like. And I think, he can kind of do damage. The way I look at it, though, this is a perfect spot for his play style, in what they will be able to utilize for him. So, yeah, this would bump him up for me. I still actually have him ranked higher than most in Xavier. I actually I like him. You and me have pretty similar rankings for Xavier, in terms of that late first, early second area. But because this tier is so messy, if I'm looking at landing spot and I'm like, hey, I've seen what the Chiefs have been able to do with these guys, and maybe he's that guy that finally falls in place. They tried it with Sky Moore, McCole Hardman, MVS. They've been trying it with all these guys. Maybe Xavier is that guy. You reach up and you go get him because of this, where that tier is. And this is good for people to know, in this tier, look for those landing spots, draft capital. I mean, they're going to utilize them. As a prospect, I'm a little higher on him than most. I don't see people calling him Debo. That's weird. He's not Debo. There's no Debo anymore. We're not going to be there. But I do think that he can be utilized in different ways.
And you mentioned that you had two guys that you were looking at. I'm presuming that second guy's still on the board. So who's it going to be, Kevin?
Yeah, he is. I'm going to take my love guy. This is the guy I've just liked ever since he was a freshman. He was supposed to play at Michigan, but then he rudely transferred to Texas before he played at Michigan. That's Xavier Worthy. And I'm going to take Xavier because he went to the Chargers. And I like that landing spot with Herbert. I think Harbaugh knows how to use him. I think that, when you're looking at that roster, it's exactly what they need. I think that having that wide receiver in the slot, especially with Mike Williams coming off an injury, Keenan Allen's getting older. I do think Keenan can play both, but Xavier's kind of interesting because even though he's smaller, I think that he has the ability to play outside little X. I mean, he obviously can't play there all the time, but he did that at Texas, and he's 172, 6'1"-ish. If he can kind of get in that frame, if he's above 170, I'm pretty happy with that. Very creative in space, a natural deep threat. Pair that with Herbert, I'm all on the train there. I think that he would be a fun late first pick.
Yeah, it feels like we've been clamoring for some speed in that offense and a deep threat for the last since Herbert got drafted, quite frankly. And if he lands there, that would be very intriguing. Ryan, I think correct me if I'm wrong, you're quite a fan of Worthy as well, are you?
I am, yeah, and I was between the two Xaviers on my pick. So as I said earlier, I just kind of deferred to the draft capital in this mock draft. But in my rookie rankings, I believe I have Worthy ranked higher. So definitely like the pick, like what Kevin said there. Chargers are going to be an interesting situation this offseason to see what they do with Williams and with Keenan Allen. Even if one of those guys is gone, there would obviously be a larger opportunity for Quentin Johnston and for any rookie receiver that lands there day one or day two.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And if you are following along and you want to check out the landing spots and check out the draft, it is in a Google sheet. We will copy that in the description below. Go and have a look, and you can follow along with the mock draft that we are utilizing here. Ryan, you are now up with the 109. Where are we going to go here? Do you still think this is the same tier as you've been talking about?
Yeah, I think it is. I think we're still in the same tier, specifically with the player I'm going to grab here. I think in one quarterback, once you see the first one go off the board, and of course that's going to be most often Caleb Williams. That's just the signal that it's a green flag to take the other two somewhere in that same range. And the quarterback 2 for me right now is Jaden Daniels. In this scenario, he's the third pick to the New England Patriots, and obviously a total total change there. I mean, that's typically, for the last several years been viewed as kind of a stay away situation from a fantasy standpoint, at least since Brady left and maybe even the year or two before that. But I think this is a sign of things to come and a sign of change, and a player like Daniels is, that's what we want in fantasy, right? He's the one with the upside. And maybe not as much as Caleb Williams, but maybe closer than people think as well.
Yeah, absolutely. I think his ceiling is absolutely phenomenal, and they always say you don't want to be the player or the coach to follow the greatest. Well, hopefully, if Gerald Mayer's going to, do a complete 180 and try and transform, how different can you get from Brady, Mac Jones? Let's go and get a undersized rushing threat that couldn't be more different. So I think it'd be very interesting if this is the way that New England do end up going. Kevin, back to you with the 110.
All right. So for those of you that haven't looked at this mock, the running back landing spots are terrible, but there is one that kind of stands out to me, and I'm going to get some crap for it because I was telling people not to draft this guy in Devy last year. And so I know if they see this, they're going to come at the receipts. You know how Twitter can be, but I'm going to take Blake Corum, who went to Baltimore. 3rd round. I'll take the day 2 capital. Now, this isn't how my rankings are. I just did my running back rankings. I dived into it for the Football Guys Rookie Guide heavily, but I like that he went to Baltimore. They need a guy like him. Blake Corum, the one thing, and I've watched Blake Corum his entire career as a Michigan fan. I've been down on him, but he's crafty at the line of scrimmage, and he changes direction quick. The Ravens have a great offense for that. And you saw, if Dobbins didn't get injured, I think Dobbins was a top 5 back this year. And you saw the usage, you saw everything in the goal line. They don't want to use Lamar in the rushing attack anymore. They want to keep him healthy. Blake fits Baltimore to a T, especially with his running style, everything that he does, his patience as a runner, his develop holes. That offensive line is really good. Gap running concepts, all of that. So late first in this based on landing spot. And if I do need a running back, or if you're looking like, hey, is there a running back that could produce this season? I think Blake Corum would be that guy based on where he went with the Ravens.
And day 3 capital, is that good enough for you to be getting this kind of late first round rookie pick?
Yeah. Well, yeah. It's close.
Well,
right?
round 3, not day 3.
Round 3, yeah. So day 2.
Sorry.
Wait a minute here. I was doing my math. I know I'm a history teacher or a former history teacher, but I was like, hey, I got this. Yeah, no, day 2. I'm totally cool with day 2. I think one thing that I've been talking about on the Football Guys Dynasty show, we've been kind of mentioning last year too. I think 4th round is okay too. Like when we're thinking the way the running backs have been devalued by the NFL. What if we need to shift our narrative to round 4 guys are maybe that's day 2 now in terms of how we think of these guys as assets just because of the way the position's been devalued. So that's kind of how I've looked at them. So I'm pretty comfortable with guys drafted from rounds 3 to 4, into that range, even 5, early 5th round, depending on what the spot is, if I like them. But I think that we have to kind of shift our narrative too about maybe capital. I know analytics guys are not going to like that, but that's how I've kind of looked at it.
No, I really like that point, Kevin, because I've done it with kind of first round picks, because I think those first 6 picks on day 2 are essentially almost first round picks in terms of, you think of some of the wide receivers, particularly that get drafted, you think of Breece Hall, stuff like that. And I've done the same thing with day 3. I think I've got sort of 18 picks in that 4th round, almost counting that as day 2. So yeah, I'm of a similar mindset to you on that, definitely. Sorry, Ryan, I interrupted.
No, I was just going to say the same thing. Totally agree. I found myself, if you've been playing for a long time, an old guy like me, they had to be a running back had to be a top 3 round pick to really matter. And if they were round 4 or later, you had your flyers or your random hits occasionally, but for the most part, you were discounting those guys. So I'm essentially adding a round to draft capital every time I look at these guys. And if you're a second rounder, if you're Breece Hall, I'm treating you like you went in the first round, or like you would have been a first rounder 6, 8, 10 years ago. So yeah, totally agree with Kevin. 4th round, not scared off by those running backs at all.
And you're up now, Ryan, with the 111. Are you still in that same tier, or have we tiered down yet?
I think we're probably hitting the spot. I think this might be it. And I like the Corum pick as the running back one. We see the top 5 running backs drafted here. The 5 running backs that are all day 2 picks in this mock draft. I see 3 what I consider pretty bad landing spots. I'm interested to hear what Kevin has to say later, but Corum is certainly the best, and I think I'm going to take the other one that I think is pretty good, and it's actually the RB1 according to this mock draft is Jonathan Brooks. He goes to the Packers here. AJ Dillon is a free agent. Aaron Jones could be a cut. I don't think that happens because I'm not sure they have really any other good options. Jonathan Brooks obviously had that late season injury, so we're going to have to wait on him. Probably best case he's a pup guy, and maybe we wait even longer than that. Maybe it's more of a Kendre Miller kind of deal or something. But thinking a little bit longer term here, I love the landing spot, obviously, of Brooks in Green Bay, late 2024 into 2025 and beyond.
Yeah, I absolutely love Brooks, the player, and as you said, that late season injury is an absolute heartbreaker. Are you comfortable spending a first round rookie pick? Well, obviously you are because you've drafted him there, but would you be comfortable spending a first round rookie pick on a guy that you could potentially have to redshirt?
No, not really. I mean, if I'm sitting on the clock at what was that, 111? 111. So, and I'm looking at Brooks as kind of my best option, I'm probably trying to trade that pick for a usable running back, right? Because you can trade. I mean, if you're giving up a first round pick, even a late one like this, you can trade for a lot of running backs. Other than maybe 10 or 12 names, you're going to be able to get just about anybody you want. And if you're willing to take an older guy, you're getting a discount there. Maybe that gives you a 1 or 2 year starter. So yeah, I mean, especially in this class, I'm not excited to spend first round picks on running backs, but with no trades available here, this was the guy.
Yeah, and Kevin, you're now up to round out the first round. Is who takes your fancy right here?
Yeah, and to answer Ryan's question, I think those 2 are the best landing spots. The other 3 are disgusting. Indianapolis, San Francisco, Washington. I'm like, I don't want to take any of that because you're really worried about it. I like Jonathan Brooks too. I actually comped him to Le'Veon Bell for all the old guys out there in college. I love his play style. I love his college play style there. So I think that is a good pick. Well, to round out the first round here, I cannot believe I'm going to draft this guy because I don't really like this guy. I'm going to be on the forefront here. Like I struggle with his profile as a receiver because everything is red flags and it's like Quentin Johnston vibes again. And I get that. However, he goes to Carolina as the wide receiver 1. I still believe in Bryce Young. I think Bryce is a very good quarterback from what I watched in college. He couldn't just disappeared. So I'm going to round out the first round with a controversial pick, but Keon Coleman. I'm going to take Keon Coleman, being the wide receiver 1 in Carolina. I know they might go get somebody in free agency, but we don't know that right now. So if he's heading into the year, I think he fits what Bryce does pretty well. And I think Bryce can unlock that a little bit. And based on the other landing spots, I like the fact that he could be their, wide receiver 1. And you're looking at, I know people said that with Jonathan Mingo. I didn't like Jonathan Mingo. I didn't draft Jonathan Mingo anywhere. And I think Keon Coleman is exceptionally better than Jonathan Mingo ever was. And I think from an athletic profile, he's definitely better there. So I'll lean Keon Coleman. I don't love the pick, but once you get down to this range, you're getting a little in one quarterback. There's a lot to not like at this area.
Yeah, and at a certain point, we've kind of got to buy into draft capital, haven't you? We talked about whether those early day 2 picks are really kind of round 1 picks. He was, first pick of day 2. It's you got to bank on that draft capital, haven't you? And that rounds out the first round. Before we dive into the second, if you haven't hit the like, haven't hit the subscribe, do so now. We've got so much more coming over the next few weeks. Brian, the first pick of the second round, takes away.
Yeah, we've got 3 receivers there close to the top of round 2. Kev took Coleman, so I think I'm going to follow suit. And I kind of have, these are very different types of players, but I have similar concerns as far as profile. I don't necessarily love the landing spot, but I'll take Troy Franklin. He goes to the Tennessee Titans here with the 38th overall pick. So we're talking about a top 5 pick in the second round. And I do agree with what you said earlier, Rich, that those early seconds, you can consider them first rounder. So I like the draft capital. Who knows what we're going to see in Tennessee? My guy Levis there from Kentucky, love him, but I'm also not super confident in him becoming a reliable fantasy asset or a player that can turn receivers into reliable fantasy assets. So that's just kind of where we are in this class right now. I think there's so many unknowns. Hopefully some of these unknowns become a little more clear after the combine later this month. Yeah,
absolutely. Well, if Troy Franklin does end up with Levis, Levis basically doesn't attempt anything that's not a check down or a deep shot. So, it could fit quite nicely with Franklin.
That's true. Very true.
Mm-hmm. So, Kevin, your first pick in the second round.
I sniped him. I sniped Kevin.
You did, because I love Troy Franklin. And I was like, there we go. It's off the board. I'm okay. So I'm going to be a hypocrite for the listeners out there, because I said if I didn't get Caleb at 106, just wait. I'm going to take Drake May at 202. Yeah. And I think it's just because the way the board falls, there's a lot of question marks out there with these wide receivers here. I mean, even Troy does with his landing spot, as much as I liked him. And I'll take Drake because, if he is in Washington, I don't love what they've done with the coaching staff. I also hate the Commanders as a Dallas fan. So, I hope they continue to not be good. But if Drake May does kind of do that, he does have good weapons around him. I mean, I like Jahan. I like Terry. I think they've done good at the running back position. Drake has that ability. And if he does become the QB1 in the beginning of the second round, I don't mind that pick.
No, I think, when you're getting him as a QB3, given the prospect he is, given that, second season, really, it's phenomenal, isn't it? So, Ryan, now 3 QBs off the board, tight end. I think we've had, 7 wide receivers. Are you thinking to go back to that running back or are those landing spots just completely turned you off that?
They're bad.
Yeah, the landing spots are bad. I like a couple of the players, and if we were just doing this team agnostic or landing spot agnostic, I would probably go for one or maybe even consider a couple of those running backs. But with those landing spots, I'm not ready to do that yet. I'm just gonna keep chasing draft capital, which is what I think you have to do here. I'll go with AD Mitchell here, the New England second rounder. Again, the early second rounder, so we feel good about that. I mean, Kev, I know you said Coleman kind of had Quentin Johnston vibes. I'm kind of getting the same thing with I'm seeing Mitchell again. He goes early second here, but I've seen him show up in first round in mocks in the first round as well. And I mean, just a major surprise. This guy is far from total package, can do it all, right? I mean, he's got some limitations. He's a fun player, but first round or even here early second round, I don't know.
Yeah, I think for me, he's a highlight player, but not one that appeals when you actually watch entire games. I think he's got some flashes, but it just doesn't. There's no consistency and doesn't put it together over long stretches. I mean, Kevin, are you a fan?
I mean, no. I mean, not to the fan of some people, right? Some people love AD. I've seen AD Mitchell wide receiver 4 in some people's rankings. And I think that is too much for me because when you watch, there's a difference in watching all 22 and in the highlight tapes. On Mitchell's all 22, there's a lot of question marks about him winning routes a lot. He wins some and you see those big plays. That's when he does that. But consistently, I think he struggles there. And I really think that he needs to be a deep vertical passing offense, but the second or third receiver. But he kind of gives me Pickens vibes, not as good as a prospect because I like George Pickens, but he's that boomer bust type guy. He's not getting you a ton of targets. I don't think he can earn a ton of targets like that. So you really have to have an efficient offense around him. And he needs to develop still. I think that he still had, I wouldn't have, been opposed to him coming back to school next year, like, and really developing, because he was injured for his first 2 years at Georgia. Wasn't very good there. I mean, he was good in the championship games when he showed up, but, really struggled. Like, I think he needed another year. So I think that if you do take Mitchell, you're probably looking at like a redshirt year almost. And hey, will he develop? And then, hey, maybe the next year, that's where it comes out. And in New England, I think it really depends on what that offense is going to look like with Jaden Daniels in this landing spot. So I'm on board with Ryan in terms of like, kind of red flags in his profile. A little nervous about it.
And you're now back up on the clock with the fourth pick in the second round. What we got?
Yeah, I'm going to take a player that I've liked for a very long time. He's one of those guys, a wide receiver too. I'm not going running back, but he's one of those guys that I've liked at Washington for probably more than most people. I'm going to take Jalen Polk. So he went to Chicago in this mock, second round, 44th pick. Kind of becomes that wide receiver 2 with Caleb Williams there and DJ Moore. I think Polk is immediately ready to just produce. I think people underestimate just how good he is. Really good catch radius, plays the ball well outside, strong tackling. I think he does well there. Skills to win vertically. Like, he gets up and goes, has good hands, profile there. Very underrated. And if he gets to there with Caleb, I think if you like that passing offense, I think Jalen Polk can be that guy.
I'm a big fan as well. Ryan, you're now back up on the fifth pick in the second round. Running back still sitting out there.
Yeah, it can keep sitting. I did want to ask Kev, Polk over McMillan. That seems to be kind of more of a recent trend. It felt like for a long time, prospect wise, whether you're looking at rankings or mocks, that it was like Odunze, McMillan, Polk, and it feels like that has switched. It obviously did here, where McMillan's a mid-third rounder.
Yeah.
Like, what has caused that push? Has Polk, what caused Polk to get the push, I guess?
I think Polk fits that more X and slot, like more versatile, where I think McMillan is the slot guy. I think that from a refined perspective, I think Polk is more refined. I think he can do more things right now as a receiver. Not to say I like McMillan. I've liked McMillan as Devy guy. I like McMillan for a while, and McMillan's actually from Fresno, right across. So I've watched him play. So like I've been a big fan of his. I probably just based on what they can do on the field right now, I think probably lifts Polk a little bit. But again, and then in this draft, like, landing spot for me. But I mean, McMillan's landing spot's not terrible. Well, actually, yes, it is. I thought it was the Bengals. It's Cleveland. But like, I thought like, hey, like, when you're looking at it, probably just from what they can do on the field, I like McMillan. But I do think that Polk is kind of underrated with what he can do and contribute out there. I think he can really fit in any system. I think that's the other thing.
Yeah, makes sense. With my pick here, where are we at? 2-5. I'm looking at a couple of receivers. These guys kind of feel like polar opposites in a lot of ways. One feels like kind of untapped potential. I don't know about the landing spot, a little crowded, and the other feels safe in a nice landing spot. I'm going for the potential. I'm going to take Tez Walker here. Devontae Walker, Eagles, mid-second, or actually closer to the late second. I mean, we kind of know the story here. If you don't, transfers multiple times, lands with Carolina, looks like he's not going to get to play, and then kind of gets saved, midway through the season, really, and was inconsistent once he finally got on the field. But the measurables here look great. I mean, he looks great getting off the bus, right? He's one of those kind of guys. And it's just like, can he live up to that frame, to that talent and that ability that you think he has?
Yeah. And then obviously went to the Senior Bowl and had some drops issues in practice and a tough game.
We don't have to talk about that. We don't have to talk about that part.
But it feels like,
well, again, consistency is, I mean, really all around is the question he needs to answer.
It feels like there's potential there. It's just, the ceiling is there. It's just how realistic it is that an NFL team can kind of get that out, isn't it? So now, middle of the second round, Kevin, 206. Anyone particularly jump out at you?
No, not at all. Like this is one of those areas where you're really just picking, poison in terms of where you want to go. I really like some of the running backs we're taking in rounds 4 or 5 when I'm looking at it over, not as a prospect, but just the landing spot a little bit where I really like them. But I'm not going to go there. I'm going to stick with the wide receiver theme. I'm going to take another wide receiver. And even though I think that, he is one of those guys that is going to be debated out there because he's a little bit of an older prospect, I kind of like where he went and the spot he went. So I'm going to take Malachi Corley out of the Jets. And that might be a little bit of a reach there, but I like the Jets. I like that landing spot. I think he fits well with Garrett Wilson. They've been kind of looking for this guy. I know they have Lazard. They're bringing in all these different wide receivers, and they're looking for someone that can maybe play that role in there. Yeah, you had to scroll really far down there, huh, Rich? So I'll take Malachi. Middle of the second. I know Ladd is sitting out there still. I like Ladd. Roman's out there. I love Roman, those guys, but I'll take a shot on Corley.
Yeah, we had Pat Fitzmaurice on 2 weeks ago, and I think Malachi Corley's kind of his guy. He's really high on him. Big fan. I think he's got some really interesting potential, and I agree with you. I think that I'm a Jets fan, so I've kind of got to big him up a bit. I think that offense can take a step forward hopefully this year. But look, there's very little after Garrett Wilson in terms of that receiving core, so yeah, could easily walk in and get significant target volume from day one. Ryan, Kevin talked a couple of guys there, a couple of receivers I think that have got some interesting landing spots. Is that someone that you're kind of eyeing up at the moment?
Yeah, I think I'll just follow that path. I was hoping for Corley, like him quite a bit. Kind of the opposite of Walker. He had the big, pretty impressive Senior Bowl week by all accounts, and he's another Kentucky boy. I wish he went to Kentucky. I could have been cheering for him, but Western Kentucky, and grew up. So he grew up in the town where I went to college. So just those connections are fun to cheer for. Kind of like Kevin was mentioning with. I already forgot who was that with McMillan. Yeah, thank you. So Corley. A guy that I'll be grabbing in the second round, especially if he lands with the Jets. I like that landing spot too. Yeah, I'll just go with Ladd McConkey here. Chiefs again, chasing the landing spot, and I don't know. Maybe we shouldn't have confidence in this Chiefs offense because they really haven't been very successful in getting the most out of their receiver draft picks, but maybe that's trending in the right direction with Rashee Rice going early.
Yeah, I think he's a very different type of prospect, isn't he, to Rashee Rice? I think for me,
oh yes, yeah,
I love the landing spot. I like the player. I just feel like for me with McConkey, I don't see the ceiling, and I think that there seems to be some people that are massive McConkey stands already on Twitter and things like that, but I just feel like he's kind of going to be like a safe. His ceiling is almost flex option.
Yeah, and he was the safe option I was referring to, deciding between Walker and McConkey. So yeah, is he ever going to be a second option in an NFL offense? It's hard for me to see right now.
Yeah, I know. I tend to agree. Right, Kevin, where are we now? 208. Mm-hmm. What do you fancy? And any of these running backs?
I'm gonna do it because I can't just leave some of these running backs off the board. The issue is, I think when you're looking at the guys that got drafted in those first three, who are they playing behind? Trey Benson going to Indianapolis, going behind Jonathan Taylor. Don't love that. Bucky going behind CMC. Absolutely don't love that because I do think CMC has a good 2 years left in terms of, he's elite, and I don't think you can just say he's going to decline, especially with his pass catching upside there. So I'll take Braylon Allen going to Washington. I know that Brian Rodriguez has looked good, or not Brian Robinson, and then Chris Rodriguez. That's how you can tell I have kids and don't sleep. So Brian, when you're thinking of what they've been, Ryan Robinson has looked really good. They have Chris Rodriguez there as well. I like that. But maybe we're looking into it. New, coaching staff. They draft a guy with the capital of the third round, and they like that. And they're like, hey, we're going to use this guy in this offense, and this is how we're going to go. They have a rookie quarterback. They're lean on that rushing attack. Maybe he gets the usage. After diving into Braylon, I was kind of a Braylon Allen hater, but after diving into him in this class and kind of reevaluating him, I do think he's a very solid north-south guy that can score fantasy points in the red zone. And if that's what you're looking for, late second, I'll take a shot on him here just based on all that context. So a lot of context to say I'm taking Braylon Allen, but that's kind of where I'd be going with this pick.
And where are you on his receiving ability? That's obviously the kind of biggest hit on him at the moment. We've seen other Wisconsin backs come out having not done a lot of receiving work in college. Do you think he's got that potential, or do you think he's just going to be a 2-down workhorse?
I think that he has the ability to catch dump offs and make something happen, whatever that means. So, I don't think he'll ever be that split outside, kind of guy where you're going to see that. I don't think he's going to be schemed that way, but he might not necessarily need to be relevant, right? I think he can stay on the field. The one area he needs to work on is his pass blocking, though, because as big as this kid is, his technique is absolutely atrocious. Like that's got to get fixed. If he can fix that, they'll keep him on the field, because of the talent that he is, and if they invest in the draft capital. So that's kind of how I look at his pass catching ability. I mean, it's serviceable. They dump it off. He'll make it. He can take it for a 20, 25, 30-yard gain. And that's okay with me if he gives me the first 2 downs of a legitimate production and volume. I'm okay with that pass catching.
No, makes a lot of sense. So Ryan, we're back on to yourself. Now there was 5 quarterbacks that went in the top 16 picks in this draft. Are you thinking about looking at either of those 2, or are we going to stay with the other skill positions?
Yeah, I'm not looking at quarterback at all, really, at this point. I'll let Kevin have his Michigan guy maybe if he wants to, but now I'm going to go with the running back position as well. And really, again, just echoing what Kevin said, the Colts landing spot for Benson, the 49ers for Bucky Irving, just situations to stay away from for pretty obvious reasons. I mean, we're looking as dynasty players, I think for the most part, unless you hit on a McCaffrey, you're looking at these running backs in 1, 2, maybe at most 3-year windows. And if you think you're going to be behind Jonathan Taylor for the next 2 or 3 years, you're going to be behind Christian McCaffrey for the next 2 years at least, then those are just guys to maybe look at in closer to the 3rd round. I mean, we're getting in the neighborhood, but I'm gonna go with the running back position, but a little bit deeper here. I'm gonna go with Will Shipley. He's a 4th rounder in this scenario, goes to the Giants, and I mean we know what's going on there, right? Saquon Barkley, a free agent, kind of a messy situation a year ago before they ultimately agree to a 1-year deal. Haven't heard much as far as what either side is thinking about there, but obviously the Giants were not willing to give him the money he wanted on a long-term deal last year. I don't think anything has changed there, so would not be surprised to see him gone. Yeah, they're going to have to do something at running back. I don't necessarily look at Shipley as a guy who's going to come in and start right away. But I also think he's really undervalued in this process. He was fantastic as a true freshman, and then that Clemson offense, or that entire Clemson program, really has been steadily declining, and then I think that's cost him. I think he's a better player than he's being given credit for right now.
Yeah, definitely, and potential 3-down upside as well. There's not a huge amount of backs that have potentially got that in this class, so there is definitely some upside there. Kevin, you're the 210 now?
Yeah.
Anyone that you're excited to be drafted at this point?
Of course, because he goes to Michigan. It's not the quarterback, though. I'm going to take my boy Roman Wilson, wide receiver out of Michigan, going to Cincinnati. I don't mind that spot because he's basically Tyler Boyd's replacement in this mock. I think they'd move on from Boyd. I do think T's coming back. I think they're going to just tag him because Burrow wants him back. So if your franchise quarterback wants you back, you usually go back. So I can see T being there, but I don't know if that really matters with Wilson. I think that he can kind of establish himself as a kind of a better Boyd, earn targets out of the slot, kind of be that safety blanket for Burrow. And I don't mind. It's kind of the same thing when you're looking at offenses that you want a piece of. These are the guys in those offenses you want a piece of. Like when you start getting down here in the dirty third, with the 3rd round, 4th round capital, I don't want an Arizona wide receiver. I'll take somebody else. And that to me is Roman Wilson.
No, like it. And I think I agree with you. I think T. Higgins is back. I think it's going to be Jesse Bates 2.0, where they tag him and then maybe let him go at the end of the year once Burrow and Chase have got some long-term extensions. So Ryan, your final pick in the draft, who is it going to be?
I think I'm going to go back to the tight end position here. I'm going to take JT Sanders from Texas. In this mock, he lands with the Carolina Panthers in the 3rd round. And I mean, that Carolina tight end spot was really a non-factor, really has been a non-factor for a while now. It feels like who have they had since Greg Olsen? I don't know. But yeah, really nobody. So another situation where you could see some immediate playing time. And this is a player, I think, we kind of said the same thing about a guy like Mitchell. I think he's raw, but I also feel like I've seen some big time improvement over the past couple of years. So if you feel confident in that and that can continue, then I love the value of Sanders here in the late 2nd.
Yeah, I love this pick. I love the prospect. I think, if it wasn't for Brock Bowers, there'd be an awful lot more hype about him. I think there is a huge amount of potential in there. As you said, he is raw, but I'm really excited about what he could be at the next level. And as you said, love that landing spot. So Kevin, your final pick here, who's it going to be?
Yeah. So everybody out there, this is my pick. Okay. So just know that when I make this pick now, and if you don't want to go this route, Benson, Irving, Estime are all still on the board. You go take them with their draft capital. That's fine. You can't even pick him on this because he's not in sleeper yet. So I'm sorry, Rich, if this screws up your video, but I'm taking Jalen Wright, Tennessee running back. He went to Arizona. All right. That's my guy. So I'm going to message sleeper. Last year I had the message sleeper about Laporta because they didn't have Laporta in the mock. So I'm messaging him then today. Jalen Wright is a guy, we just put out our guide. We were talking about him. I like this kid. I think that, when you're looking at him, explosive, out there in Tennessee, looked good. First 1,000-yard rusher in Tennessee's history since 2015. And he did it on only 137 attempts. Multiple schemes, big playability, and getting him in Arizona where it looks like, Connors is there, but he could be the running back 1. I love that situation for him. We've seen what James Conner's been able to do in that offense. I think it's an underrated Arizona offense as well. They had Marvin Harrison Jr. there. They have Kyler Murray. I would love for him to find his way into Arizona. So I'm taking Jalen Wright. I know it screws up your video. I'm sorry. He's not in the board, but that's what I'm taking.
No, I love it. He's my homework for tomorrow. So I'm loving doing these shows because it feels like every show there's someone that comes on that hypes up a player that I've not watched yet. So he's my guy that I've got scheduled to watch tomorrow. So I'm very much looking to dive into that film. Sorry, Ryan, I jumped in there.
Yeah, is Kev saying that the Jalen Wright's going to have the same kind of value gain as Sam Laporta? That's what I'm hearing. That's what I heard.
Maybe that's what it'd be. Hopefully I need to get a contract deal with sleeper. I can tell you all the rookies you're missing. Just give me some money. I send them over to you guys.
Beautiful. Well, before we disappear, Ryan, any player left on the board that you'd have been excited to be drafted at this point?
Well, I mean, we talked around them. I definitely think this is the range where you take guys like Trey Benson and Bucky Irving, if not late 2nd, then certainly early 3rd round. I like Jamari Thrash a lot. Another Kentucky guy that went, or not a Kentucky guy, but played for Louisville, of course. He's a Lions 3rd rounder. Interesting pick with Williams there. Not exactly sure about that one, but I like the player. Dylan Johnson in New England, another player I like. I don't know about the landing spot, and he's a 6th rounder here. So that would be like maybe late 3rd, not necessarily the next pick or 2.
No, it makes a lot of sense. And Kevin, anyone else left out there that Ryan didn't mention that you fancy?
I think, Audric Estime from Notre Dame, he went to the Chargers. I think that's an interesting spot, depending on what Eckler is. I like Estime is weird. He's sneaky athletic. When you watch him play, all of a sudden he's hurdling guys. I think he does really good between the tackles as well. This is the thing. If you want a running back in this class, you go to Harbaugh and Greg Roman, and you're like, hey, these guys are going to run the ball. So if you see usage there, it definitely could be there. I think Audric's a guy to keep an eye on, or really just in general. if the Chargers go target a running back, I mean, Eckler is still there. Spiller, I guess, is still there, whatever you think of Spiller. But if they target a running back, I think that's a guy late second, early third, if they're still on the board, not, taking a shot on those guys, because the volume's going to be there in this offense, especially if the Chargers take a tackle in the first 5 picks, which I think they could do, like an offensive lineman. Then you're really going to be diving into, like, hey, maybe they go get a running back and they kind of use that for their volume, and that's their new offense.
No, I think the Chargers are definitely one of those running back landing spots. Hopefully they don't go and spend big money on someone in free agency. But with their cap issues, I'd be shocked if they were able to do that. But gentlemen, thank you ever so much for your time. Thank you very much for jumping on. Kevin, remind everyone where can they find you? Where can they find your work?
Yeah, you can find me on Twitter or X or whatever you call it now, at DuBois_22. And you can go to footballguys.com. We do a lot of my Dynasty stuff there. And in the Devy Royale YouTube channel for our Devy content.
Beautiful. And Ryan, remind everyone where they can find yourself.
Sure. Ryan MC23 on Twitter, and find all my work at dynastyleaguefootball.com.
Beautiful. And if you haven't, go and check out, there's the Superflex rookie mock from last week. Go and check that out if you made it this far. And of course, we'll be back next week with another Monday mock.